So, last week on our technically first episode of Commlink, we talked about some issues that I had found with the community, issues that I think were presenting themselves, getting much worse. This has spurred a lot of discussion. We actually ended up on Space Tomatoes podcast talking a little bit about it. Basically, what I realized is that there is not a single consensus of opinions in this game. Fantastic. End of last week, we had Inside Star Citizen, and they showed us some updates coming to SPK and to Prison. Pretty much all of the updates, for the most part, were liked. There is an exception. The idea of making SPK a lot more involved, making it a bit of a hub. I haven't seen any issues there, and it looks really cool. I don't think a single person disliked what's happened with prisons, because, like, why would you? It's just, once again, it's just extra gameplay at prison. But there was a huge change, which some people are absolutely livid about. SPK, for at the very least 318, is going to be the only place you can get rid of your crime stat without going to prison. We've seen a couple of schools of thought on this change. One of the biggest ones that's been coming up and is probably the loudest voice, they do not like this change because they want to be able to clear their crime stat in other places. I was talking to Space Tomato about this, and I didn't really understand why people were mad about this at first. Yeah, getting crime stat is 100% a thing that happens right now from like random bugs, and that's kind of shitty. So you want to be able to get rid of your crime stat that way. But prison is faster. Prison is like the fastest way to get rid of crime stat 90% of the time. So I was really curious what happened, and then I realized it's because it's fun. It's fun to hack away your crime stat. And so if you are forced to go to SPK constantly, then your enjoyment of that activity becomes garbage, right? If you're that kind of player that isn't really, you're not really there for mass PvP. You might even be there for just like a little bit of PvP. Like, you might be okay with fighting a player or something, but being forced to do that where there's going to be lots of PvP, I can understand why people are a little bit upset by it. I will say, I still think it is more beneficial than it is negative to make it one location. From what I can see, this particular brand of PvP, it's good. Like a lot of complaints we have about PvP previously is that it's not centralized, like from people who aren't doing PvP. Having it in a centralized area makes a lot of sense because of that. But I still understand the frustration. It's just, I think it is better than it is worse. Now, there is a case to be made that the last time SPK was like the only place to undo your crime stat, we only had 50 people per server. Now we have 100. So there could be an issue there. There's also, like, they could once again increase server caps in 318 and make it even worse, to the point that even PvPers don't want to go to SPK because it just becomes an absolute meme. One thing I will say is there is also a little bit of pushback from some members of the PvP community with this change. With changes to SPK, not necessarily that change, which I think is also unfounded. But there's a small part of the community that's been saying that, you know, making SPK hard, like making SPK a hard mode thing, even though there's more rewards there now, that's important to remember. Some people are complaining about the fact that, yeah, it's going to be much harder for them to do anything. It's also a solo player's nightmare. Criminal behavior in Starset obviously should have downsides, but I don't think solo players should be punished. I think that's a big thing too. New SPK will be for PvPers, and the PvE folk should be happy as it now keeps the PvPers busy elsewhere. Except it does remove a little bit of criminal PvE gameplay. Now, I would say that the whole concept of criminal gameplay is supposed to be you are playing the riskiest form of content. So you're going to be forced into PvP situations. And if you don't, then too bad. But like, that's also not necessarily a great take. Like, people should be able to enjoy the game regardless. I think UGF CS clearing is too easy. Having SPK is good, but in a location like SPK, in my opinion. That's a pretty good take. Yeah, UGF CS clearing is still far too easy. And you want criminal gameplay, like removing crime stat should be harder than going to jail 9 times out of 10. It should be faster. And that's a big issue with all of the crime system at the moment, is because crimes aren't being punished correctly. But because that's not the case, then it means that clearing crime stat is really only a positive thing for players that want to participate in active PvP. We already see congestion in bunkers. SPK will be a disaster zone. Interesting that they're doing this with 100 players and possibly more, like I said, if they if they add to the amount of people in 318. Even though I think SPK is cool, it still might be too many people for the one location. So either having like just one more SPK or having a rotating UGF where you can hack it from wouldn't be the worst idea. Everyone who likes to be criminal, killing people in lawful missions and calling it PvP. I mean, it is. I was talking about, it is still PvP. The big thing that comes is when people have vastly different definitions of what griefing is. That's like one of the biggest things I've learned in the last week. After last week's conversation, everyone has different takes on what constitutes griefing versus legitimate PvP. And I don't think that's ever going to change. The only sort of way to curate it is through crime system / reputation, like we were talking about last week, so that PvP players think that they're still getting enough value out of participating PvP, and PvE players still think that the punishment is adequate for PvP players. It's a weird situation, which is why I'm more talking about not necessarily the PvP stuff, but just how does this affect playing as a criminal in any form, PvE or PvP. Problem with the only place that you can clear bounty is SPK means that bounty hunters consider SPK and wait for players to come to them. Yeah, we were talking about this, I don't know if it was in Discord or on Twitch, Muffin. I agree, that's really weird. I just hope, the way to fix that would be to make it a restricted area for 50 kilometers so that they could sit out there and wait for people to come in, but they're going to be much further away, before they get the mission to be allowed in. So I actually think that's an easy remedy. But is it worth it is the question, right? There might be better ways to fix it. If they take a look at time, merit balance, the missions get you out too fast. They 100%. But once again, that's because the reason that jail times are so low right now, because they weren't in the past. You would get an 18-hour time that would take you 2 to 3 hours to get out if you were actively playing. And that's a pretty decent punishment in my opinion. But they changed it because people get crime stat all the time on accident. If we had rep loss with crime stats, more loss the higher the crime stat. Yeah, we were talking about this once again last week. Having a reputation system somewhat in relation to crime stat would be fantastic. 318, we get cargo refactor and physical cargo is a thing. Criminals can now steal physical cargo. Pirates can actually pirate now. They have zero cost or consequence for their actions other than a slap on the wrist outside of traders. Miners massive initial time money investment in comparison. Scale tips way too heavily in favor of criminals unless they make cargo mining make so much money that hiring escorts plus turret operators is still profitable. So cargo running. So there's a lot of things that we don't know that's happening in that patch for some of that to be relevant. We have no idea how profitable cargo running is going to be. Mining running will presumably still be profitable. So that is a part of it. With them changing prisons and SPK in 318, I actually do expect that they will make crime times longer because you want people to test SPK, you want people to test prisons. So regardless, you should make those times longer so people spend more time playing them. So I think the risk will go up, but it'll still probably be too low just in the sense of the SPK stuff. But it'll be interesting. There's just so much we don't know about cargo refactor. And I was talking to Tomato about this.